For this topic, we're learning how to solve physics problems. It's as easy as remembering to guess. The best part is there's no actual guessing involved, but this method, this procedure, this process, is something you will use for every type of math problem that you get in science class from now until the end of the year. The best part about this, besides not guessing, is that it makes each problem worth 5 points. So, if you don't get the exact correct answer, if you mess up in your multiplication or your division or something along the way, you can still get 4 out of 5 points even if your answer is not correct because you've shown me the correct process throughout. So let's go on to the first step. The first step in this process is the G, which stands for given. In this step, you are writing down the information that's given in the problem. You must write the variable, the number, and the units in order to get full credit. That's 3 things that you have to write down. Remember variables. We talked about those briefly when we talked about units. A variable is a letter that stands for a number. In the case of your science things, your variable usually stands for a type of measurement, like d for distance or t for time. So if we look at the example, what speed is the train going if it goes 9 meters in 3 seconds? There's 2 pieces of given information. We see 9 meters is one piece of given information and 3 seconds is the other piece of information. So when we take a look at that, we have to know, okay, what are those actually telling us? Well, 9 meters stands for distance. So we would write d for distance equals 9 meters. 3 seconds is a time, so we'd write t equals 3 seconds. And then we're ready to move on to the next step. The next step in the process goes with U, and it stands for unknown. Once we know what's given, we can ask, what's the problem looking for, or what don't I know? We can figure out what information, and it's usually in the form of a how question. This is your variable. This is the variable that you will use throughout the rest of the problem. And you're going to let the letter of the unknown quantity be your variable. So you might be looking for time. You would write t equals question mark. In our example, the problem says what speed. What speed is a what question. If we are looking for speed, that means the variable we need to use is s. So it would look like this. S equals question mark. And then that's all you need for this step. The next step is E for equation. Here's where you need to write the equation that you would use to solve the problem. So to know the equations, for the most part, I will give you the equations you need to use, or they can be found in your book. But I'm also going to teach you a method to figure out which equation you need. So if we look here, we have a triangle. If I put the 3 variables that go with speed into this triangle in the right way, the d goes on the top, d for distance, s times t goes on the bottom, speed times time. To use this triangle method, what you do is cover up the unknown. So since you can't see me covering this with my finger, I'm going to use a highlighter here and kind of cross out what we're looking for. We said in our last example that we were looking for s. So we're going to ignore the s. And then you read the rest of your equation as it shows in the triangle. So the rest of the equation would be d, and this line here stands for divide, so it's d divided by t. So the correct answer, or the correct equation for this example problem, is s equals d divided by t. The next step is to substitute. You take the information in that equation and you substitute the values from the given step into that equation. Make sure you don't change the math symbols like division or multiplication signs so that you know what to do when you get to the actual computation part. So in our example problem with the train, instead of saying s equals d divided by t, we have s equals 9 meters divided by 3 seconds. Now we have a math problem we can solve. Don't forget to write the units. 9 meters divided by 3 seconds equals 3 meters per second. And you should be able to see here where your units come from. Meters per second turns into meters per second. Our final step, I like to call the stupid step. This is where you check to make sure that you don't make any stupid mistakes. Check your computation, check your adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. Make sure that you have units next to every single number in the problem all the way through, because you won't get full credit without them. And then if you were writing this on a piece of paper, I would ask you to box or circle your answer. Since you're doing this on the computer, you don't need to do that. Remember, you must do every step for every problem every time. Now let's take a look at some examples. If Ms. Allen can swim 50 meters in 49 seconds, how fast is she swimming? Well, let's see if we can figure that out. What is our given information? We know we have 50 meters, but the problem's not complete unless you tell me what variable that goes with. What is 50 meters measuring? It's measuring distance. Remember that you're always going to be using some form of speed, distance, or time for these first problems. I'm not going to throw in anything crazy like temperature. The other given information is 49 seconds. That is a time. So, for this first problem, we say our unknown. What are we looking for? The question's asking how fast. So that means I'm looking for speed. The equation for speed. I'm going to write my triangle down here. I'm not expecting you to have the triangle in this step. I just want the actual equation. You're going to need to keep track of the triangle on a separate piece of paper. And the triangle always looks in this order. D is always on top. S times T is always on the bottom. So if we look for the equation that matches this, I would be saying, okay, cover up the unknown. Well, let's get rid of the S. And what do I have left? I have D divided by T left. So my equation, speed equals distance divided by time. Then when I substitute, I leave the S equals, we're still looking for speed, leave my math symbol the same, and I substitute 50 meters. If it's on the top in the fraction, then I put it on the top in my problem, and 49 seconds is my time. And then you can use a calculator to solve. I have no problems with you using a calculator to do your work, as long as you make sure that you round to the correct number of digits. 50 divided by 49 is 1.02, and my units would be meters per second. Good. Here's another problem. A car travels 200 kilometers west in 2 hours. How fast is it going? Well, let's take a look at our given information. 200 kilometers. Kilometers is a unit that we use for distance. 2 hours. Hours is a unit we use for time. So that means if we have distance and we have time, we're looking for how fast something goes, which is its speed. That means my equation is speed equals distance divided by time. When you type this on the computer, it will most likely look like this, which is fine, but when I write it out, I like to use a fraction. It makes it a little easier to see. When we substitute, we have speed equals 200 kilometers divided by 2 hours. And that means My speed is 100 kilometers per hour. Good. Let's take a look at our next practice problem. If a car is going 75 kilometers per hour, goes for 5 hours, how far has it gone? Notice here, we have a different how question. That means we're going to be using a different equation. So let's take a look at our given information. 75 kilometers per hour. What does that sound like? It sounds like a speed. Speed is 75 kilometers per hour. Notice that I'm including the units even when I write the given information. If you don't, you will not get full credit. And this car goes for 5 hours, so that is a time. The time is 5 hours. That means my unknown, how far. How far is asking a distance. Now, the equation for distance. Let's think about that triangle again. If I take and erase the unknown, that means I'm erasing the distance. What do I have left? What I have left is speed times time. So my equation is distance equals speed times time. So for this one, you're multiplying. As we write this out, it should say distance equals 75 kilometers per hour times 5 hours. And 75 times 5 is distance equals 375. Now what units would I use here? Well, in this case, the hours cancel out and we're left with the distance unit of kilometers. Okay, please make sure that all of your information is correct before you hand things in, before you save and submit your work. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me.